Now that you've seen all kinds of different techniques and all kinds of different tools to create shapes here in CorelDRAW, let's start talking about managing your shapes. And in this particular exercise, what we'll do is we'll talk about a couple of different techniques that you can use to select shapes inside your documents. Now, as you can see, I don't have any shapes drawn just yet, so here's what I'd like you to do. I'm going to go over to the toolbox over on the left-hand side, and I just clicked on my rectangle tool there. Go ahead and do the same thing. And what I want you to do essentially is I want you to create maybe 3 or 4 shapes on your page. And quite honestly, it doesn't even really matter what kinds of shapes you draw. You can draw some stars if you want. You can draw some ovals if you want. It doesn't really matter. I think what I'll do here is I'll just create a couple of rectangles here, and then maybe I'll create a quick oval. Maybe something like this, right? Okay, wonderful. Now, the next thing that I'd like you to do is inside your toolbox on the left-hand side, all the way up at the top, go and click on your home base tool. Remember this guy, the pick tool, right? And make sure that one of your shapes is selected. It should be selected, by the way, because you just finished drawing it, right? And what happens, by the way, is the last shape that you drew, and obviously you can see this on your screen as well, remains selected, right? Now, before I get into some selection techniques here, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump ahead just a little bit. I want to throw in some quick color, just so we can see what we have here. And we'll talk in more detail about color later on, but I'm just going to throw in a bit of color just so we can see what we have here. And to do this, what I'll do is over on the side, I still have my Object Properties Docker open. If you don't have your Object Properties Docker open, by the way, on the right-hand side, head to your Window menu and then down to Dockers, and then just look for Object Properties. And make sure you're on the Fill tab there, and then from the Fill Type drop-down menu, choose Uniform Fill, and you should get some kind of a fill on your currently selected object. Now, I wound up with sort of this scarlety red color there. You can go and choose whatever color you want. It doesn't really matter. And as I say, I'm going to talk in great detail about color in a little while. All right, so there's the first guy there. The next thing that I'm going to do is I'm just going to single-click on the next guy there with the pick tool. I'm still on that pick tool there, and I'll just repeat the process. I'll head back to my Object Properties Docker over on the right-hand side. From the Fill Type drop-down menu, choose Uniform Fill, and then go ahead and select a color from this little block of colors here. All right, last guy, same story. Back to the Object Properties, Uniform Fill, and go ahead and pick a color. Okay, wonderful. Now that we have a little bit of color here, what I'll do is I'll collapse down my object properties just by clicking on this collapse Docker icon up at the top there. Okay, there's our 3 shapes, and we have some color. Now, whether you knew it or not, you have already started the process of learning how to select shapes inside CorelDRAW. In other words, with the pick tool selected at the top of the toolbox, you can simply single-click on the different objects inside your document, just like that, right? That's really all there is to it, right? Fantastic. All right, now what else can we do, though? Well, what if I wanted to select multiple shapes? Well, that's a great question. What I'm going to do here is I'll simply hold down the Shift key, and I already have one object selected, and with Shift held down, I'll go and simply single click on a second shape. Now both shapes are selected. Now what's really neat about this is if I hit delete right now, then both shapes will be deleted. If I move my shapes around, they'll both be moved. They're kind of grouped. But if I want to deselect my shapes now, if I don't want these shapes selected, all I'm going to do is simply bring my cursor away from the shapes, maybe out into some white space over on the left side or here on the right side, and just single click, and that will deselect everything, right? So there you go. So you can single click on a shape, hold down Shift, and click on a second shape to add that shape to the selection. And in fact, I can keep going. I could continue holding down Shift and then click on a third shape and a fourth shape and on and on and on, right? Now, what's neat about the Shift key too, by the way, is not only will it add objects to your selection, it will also subtract objects from your selection. What do I mean by that? Well, right now I have all 3 shapes selected. I'm going to hold down Shift and I'm going to click on my scarlet rectangle here, and that takes the scarlet rectangle out of the selection. Let me do that one more time here for you. I'll hold down Shift again and I'll click on my yellow circle, and that takes the yellow circle out of the selection. So holding down the Shift key is kind of cool because it will either add to a selection or subtract from a selection. So if you're brand new to all this, you might want to practice that just a little bit. Are there any other ways to select shapes inside CorelDRAW? Absolutely. I'm just going to deselect here by once again clicking inside some white space. You've already seen this next one a million times, but I'll bounce bounce it off you anyway. Remember the keyboard shortcut, Control A, and that will select everything on your page, right? Or everything inside your document. So be careful with that one, because you might have a stray object way over on the right-hand side that you forgot was there, but you need it, and you wind up hitting the delete key to toast what you think is just the objects inside your page, and you wind up toasting something that was actually important. So be careful with that one. Okay, there's one more method that I want to show you here, and this one is probably my favorite. What we can do is we can click and drag to select a shape. I'll show you what I mean here. What I'll do is I'll use my scarlet rectangle as my example here. I'm still on my pick tool inside the toolbox. I'm going to bring my cursor above and to the left of the shape that I want to select, and what I'll do is I'll simply click and drag, and notice I get these I call them the marching ants, the dotted frame there all the way around the object there. So whatever sits inside this dotted frame is going to get selected as soon as I let go of my mouse, just like that. Now, again, you might want to practice that one a little bit. Bring your cursor above and to the left of the object, or below and to the left of the object, or below and to the right of the object. It doesn't really matter, and simply click and drag a bounding box, if you will, around that shape, just like that. Now, what's cool about this clicking and dragging is I can use it to select multiple shapes. So I could click and drag a bounding box around multiple shapes if I wanted to, right? But what's interesting to note, by the way, is if I click and drag a bounding box and it doesn't enclose a shape, it simply touches a shape, something like I have here, and I let go with my mouse, that shape doesn't get selected. So in other words, the shapes have to be enclosed inside the bounding box to be included in the selection, if that makes sense. Anyway, there's a whole bunch of different ways to select shapes.
To change your